Have you ever wondered why the more kind-hearted you are, the more invisible you seem to become? It's a quiet pain, one that doesn't scream but lingers. You offer your time, your patience, your understanding. You stay calm during the chaos. You give second chances even when they're not deserved. And for a while you believe this is the right thing to do, that your goodness will return to you. But slowly something changes. You start to notice the people you've protected are the ones who test you the most. The ones you've forgiven begin to expect your silence. Your kindness turns into a language no one listens to. You feel it when your voice trembles as you swallow your truth. You see it in the way people interrupt you, disregard your needs, or only show up when they need something. And you wonder, when did kindness become a weakness? But this didn't happen overnight. It happened gradually. A pattern you didn't even realize was forming. Today we're going to expose that pattern. Because this isn't just your story, it's the story of millions who were taught that being good is enough, only to find out the hard way it's not. Most people won't admit it out loud, but deep down they know what it feels like to be punished for their goodness. To have their kindness mistaken for weakness. It begins subtly. You're the person who always listens, who forgives easily, who avoids conflict because you just want peace. You try to be the bigger person, believing that love and empathy will eventually speak louder than anything else. But instead of receiving the same care and consideration, you're overlooked, dismissed, or worse, taken advantage of. At first you rationalize it. Maybe they're just busy. Maybe they didn't mean it. You excuse their behavior and silence your discomfort, hoping that one day they'll notice your consistency and start treating you differently. But the days stretch into years. You begin to feel something tightening in your chest, a quiet frustration, a dull ache in your spirit that you can't quite explain. It's the pain of being invisible while trying your best to be good. You sit in rooms full of people who speak over you. You accommodate others until you forget what your own needs were in the first place. You accept apologies with no real change behind them. You give and give not because you're naive, but because you were taught that goodness is about sacrifice. That to be loved, you must first prove that you're easy to love. And being easy to love often means being easy to dismiss. The world doesn't always reward kindness. In fact, sometimes it punishes it. People with sharp edges, those who say no without flinching, who protect their time, who walk away from what doesn't serve them, are seen as confident, even admirable. But you with your softness, your empathy, your tendency to see the best in people, are often left behind. And it hurts in a way that's hard to describe. It's not just social, it's physical, it's emotional. It lives in your body, in the lump in your throat when someone disrespects you and you pretend it doesn't matter. In the tightness of your jaw after saying yes when everything inside you screamed no. In the exhaustion you carry after constantly being there for others, only to find no one shows up for you. And here's the hardest part: the world tells you to keep being kind, to keep giving, to keep turning the other cheek. But no one tells you how to protect that kindness. No one teaches you the difference between being loving and being used, between being patient and being a doormat, between keeping the peace and abandoning yourself. So you start to question, is there something wrong with me? Am I too soft, too sensitive, too emotional? But the truth is, there's nothing wrong with you. What's wrong is the belief that you have to shrink in order to be safe, that you must bend to be accepted, that you must erase yourself to be loved. The pain you're feeling is real, and it's not weakness, it's a signal, a deep emotional signal that something needs to change. Not your heart, but your boundaries. Not your kindness, but your capacity to protect it. Because kindness is not the problem. The absence of self-respect is. At some point you start to wonder, why does the world seem to reward those who are cold, calculating, and even cruel, while people who lead with kindness are often overlooked, dismissed, or mistreated? It feels unfair. It feels upside down. But what if the issue isn't with your goodness, but with how the human mind actually processes power, respect, and boundaries? It's not that people are inherently evil. Most people aren't out to hurt you. But human psychology is built to respond to what it perceives as strength. And when someone consistently puts others first, avoids confrontation, and never asserts themselves, their behavior is subconsciously interpreted not as noble, but as submissive. And in the hierarchy of social interaction, submission often signals that it's safe to ignore, test, or even manipulate that person. This isn't just theory, it's biology. The human mind is wired to detect dominance and confidence. It looks for cues in body language, tone of voice, eye contact, and decisiveness. We are trained consciously or not to respond to those who project certainty. That's why someone who says no with calm conviction is taken more seriously than someone who always says yes with a nervous smile. This doesn't mean you have to become harsh or arrogant, but it does mean that your kindness alone isn't enough. In fact, Machiavelli recognized this over 500 years ago when he wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." At first glance, that sounds cruel, but it speaks to a deeper truth. People don't respect intentions. They respect boundaries. They respond not to your desire to be liked, but to your ability to command space. Think about it. Who gets the promotion? The person who quietly works overtime hoping to be noticed, or the one who speaks up, asks for what they want, and sets firm expectations? Who gets respect in relationships? The one who tolerates disrespect in the name of love, or the one who calmly walks away when lines are crossed? It's not personal. It's psychological. The mind doesn't register silent sacrifice as strength. It registers it as passivity, and passivity in the eyes of others often invites disregard. That's the uncomfortable truth. But it's also liberating, because it means you're not broken, you're not weak, you're not doomed to be overlooked forever. You simply need to understand that kindness must be accompanied by clarity, that peace must be protected by power, that your presence must speak even when your mouth is silent. Respect isn't earned just by being good. It's earned by being good and grounded, by drawing a line and standing behind it. At the heart of this uncomfortable reality lies a voice from centuries ago, Niccolo Machiavelli, a name often misused, misunderstood, even feared. To many, he symbolizes manipulation or cold strategy. But if you truly understand what he saw, what he lived through, and what he warned us about, you'll realize that Machiavelli wasn't encouraging cruelty. He was exposing truth, a truth most people still don't want to face. Machiavelli lived during one of the most treacherous periods in Italian history, a time of political betrayal, fragile alliances, ruthless courts, and civil unrest. He witnessed how power shifted not based on virtue or good intentions, but on clarity, decisiveness, and an unshakable grasp of human nature. And from that brutal clarity came his most infamous line, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." To the idealist, this sounds cold, even heartless. But Machiavelli wasn't prescribing tyranny. He was describing the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. Because love, as powerful as it feels, is unstable. It is tied to emotion, to changing moods, to shifting circumstances. People love you when you give them what they want. But at the first sign of disagreement, disapproval, or denial, that love can turn into distance or even resentment. Fear, when used wisely, does not mean terror. It means healthy caution. It's the invisible line that says, "You may like me, but you will also respect me. You may approach but not overstep." This kind of fear is not about domination. It's about boundaries. And boundaries, Machiavelli understood, are the foundation of true leadership, whether you're leading a nation, a family, or your own life. You see, most people are not malicious, but they are opportunistic. If you constantly give without condition, if you allow disrespect without consequence, people will push further. Not because they're evil, but because you've unintentionally signaled that they can. That's what Machiavelli wanted us to see. That power without respect is fragile, and kindness without strength is forgotten. His words aren't a call to abandon compassion. They're a reminder that in order to protect what's good in you, you must first understand how the world actually works. In that sense, Machiavelli wasn't a villain. He was a realist, a mentor, one who challenged us to drop our illusions and face the world with open eyes and steady hands. Because only then can you truly protect your kindness, without letting it be your downfall. There's a silent war playing out inside many of us, a war between the desire to be kind and the need to be respected. You want to be a good person. You want to love, deeply support others, keep the peace. But what happens when that kindness becomes the very reason you're taken for granted? When your good heart is mistaken for weakness, and your patience becomes a license for others to push you past your limits. This is the kindness dilemma, the emotional crossroads where you begin to question everything you were taught. If I stop being so nice, does that make me cold? If I draw boundaries, will people see me as selfish? If I say no, will I lose love? You were raised to believe that being a good person meant putting others first, that love required sacrifice, that speaking your mind was aggressive, that choosing yourself meant you were being rude or dramatic. And so you practiced kindness like a religion. You gave people the benefit of the doubt. You forgave offenses without apology. You softened your voice and your boundaries to keep others comfortable. But somewhere along the way, you lost a piece of yourself. You started saying yes when you wanted to scream no. You allowed emotional disrespect because you were afraid of confrontation. You tolerated one-sided relationships because you thought enduring pain was a form of strength. But it wasn't strength, it was self-erasure. And the deeper tragedy, you believed you were doing the right thing. This dilemma cuts deep because it strikes at your identity. You fear that if you become firm, if you protect yourself, you'll lose the warmth that defines you, that you'll become someone you don't recognize. But the truth is, real kindness does not require self-sacrifice. Real love doesn't demand your silence. Kindness without clarity becomes martyrdom. Compassion without limits becomes self-destruction. The kindness that endures, the kind that truly heals and uplifts, is the kind that honors both others and yourself. So ask yourself, has your kindness turned into a pattern of avoidance? Have you confused being peaceful with being passive? Because until you answer that honestly, you'll remain stuck in the very cycle that drains you. The goal isn't to stop being kind, it's to become a kind person who is also untouchable. One of the most insidious traps kind people fall into is the craving for validation, the need to be seen as good, like agreeable. And it doesn't always look desperate. In fact, it often wears the mask of generosity, empathy, and selflessness. But beneath the surface, there's a quiet hunger. Do they approve of me? Do they think I'm kind enough? Am I easy to love? This hunger is not born from arrogance. It's born from conditioning. Maybe you were raised in an environment where love was conditional, where being good meant being quiet, helpful, non-confrontational, where affection was only given when you pleased others. And over time, you internalized the belief that your worth was tied to how useful, agreeable, or forgiving you were. So you learned to bend, to shrink, to silence your needs in exchange for approval. And when you weren't met with appreciation, you didn't get angry, you gave more. You worked harder. You explained yourself. You tried to prove again and again that you were worth loving. This is the heart of validation dependency, when your sense of self becomes tethered to how others react to you. You become addicted to being the nice one, the understanding one, the person who always gives others the benefit of the doubt, even when they've given you every reason not to. You confuse being peaceful with being passive. You forgive even when they don't apologize. You justify even when they disrespect you. But the cost is steep, because the more you seek validation, the more you abandon yourself. You betray your own instincts to maintain the role of the good person. And with each compromise, each swallowed truth, you drift further from your center. Validation dependency is a form of emotional slavery. It keeps you locked in patterns where you need others to reflect back your value before you can believe it yourself. And the truth is, you'll never be free until you break that dependency. Respect, real lasting respect, can never come from people-pleasing. It begins the moment you decide that your self-worth doesn't need applause, that you are whole even when you're not performing for anyone's approval. There's a quiet kind of power that doesn't come from speaking louder, but from standing firmer. It's not flashy, it doesn't demand attention, yet when it's present, everyone feels it. That power is born from psychological boundaries, the invisible lines that say, you may come this far, but no further. Most people think power is about domination, about yelling, intimidating, or controlling others. But true power doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't need volume. It needs presence, the kind that radiates from a person who knows who they are, what they tolerate, and where they draw the line. You've seen it before. The individual who says no without guilt, who doesn't over-explain, who leaves when the energy turns toxic and never looks back. They don't need to threaten. Their boundary is felt, and it's not built on fear of others, it's built on a deep alignment with themselves. This is what most kind people miss. They think being strong means becoming someone else, that to set boundaries is to lose their softness. But in reality, boundaries are what protect that softness. They are the walls around your emotional home, guarding the peace you worked so hard to build. Without boundaries, even the kindest heart becomes a target. Not because the world is cruel, but because the world responds to what you allow. When you consistently say yes to what drains you, when you stay silent around disrespect, when you let people test your limits without consequence, you unknowingly teach them how to treat you. Psychological boundaries aren't about punishing others. They're about honoring yourself. And the moment you stop explaining your worth, stop negotiating your standards, and stop tolerating emotional debt, that's when the world begins to adjust around you. It's not aggression, it's self-respect. And self-respect is magnetic. It commands attention without demanding it. It earns respect not through fear, but through clarity. In the end, people may not always agree with your boundaries, but the right ones will respect them. And the wrong ones will remove themselves, which is its own kind of peace. Fear has been misunderstood for centuries. We often think of it as something negative, something used to oppress, control, or harm, and in the wrong hands it is. But fear, when used with wisdom and intention, is not a weapon of destruction. It's a boundary of protection, and understanding this could change the way you carry yourself forever. Machiavelli never suggested we become cruel for the sake of power. He wasn't glorifying tyranny. What he offered was brutal honesty, that people as a rule remember caution more than comfort. They forget the favors you extend, but they never forget the line they know not to cross. Why? Because fear, unlike love, has a sharper memory. But this isn't about making others afraid of you in a toxic way. It's about embodying a kind of energy that says, I will not tolerate disrespect. It's the unspoken signal, the posture, the silence, the unwavering look that lets people know you cannot be manipulated, guilted, or coerced. It's not force, it's presence. In healthy relationships, whether personal or professional, a subtle fear can create a space of respect. Not fear of harm, but fear of loss. Fear of losing access to your time, your care, your loyalty. Because those things, when truly valuable, should not be easily gained or easily kept. Think of fear not as a hammer to strike with, but as a locked gate. It doesn't hurt anyone, but it reminds them not everyone is entitled to entry. When used correctly, fear creates clarity. It separates those who are drawn to your essence from those who are only feeding off your compliance. This is the balance, not to become someone feared for cruelty, but someone respected because of boundaries. Someone who doesn't need to raise their voice because their absence says more than words ever could. Someone who doesn't seek to dominate, but refuses to be diminished. Because in the end, it's not about being feared, it's about being unshakable. And sometimes that requires others to feel a little uncertainty when they think about crossing you. Before you can change the way others treat you, you have to confront something much harder: the way you treat yourself. Because the real war isn't happening outside, it's happening within. It's the quiet, exhausting battle between your desire to be respected and your fear of being rejected. So many of us carry invisible wounds from childhood moments where love was conditional, where saying no came with punishment, where speaking up meant being labeled difficult or selfish. Over time, we learn to adapt. We learn to survive by pleasing, by blending in, by becoming what others needed us to be. And we were praised for it, for being easy, for being quiet, for never causing trouble. But those survival patterns became prisons. Now as adults, we still carry the belief that love must be earned through sacrifice, that setting a boundary risks losing affection, that disagreeing makes us unlovable, so we stay silent even when our spirit screams. We give in even when our soul begs us not to. This is the internal battle. How do I protect myself without betraying who I am? The truth is, you don't need to become someone else to be strong. You don't need to harden your heart or shut down your emotions, but you do need to unlearn the lie that love requires self-abandonment. You have to realize that the voice inside you, the one that hesitates to speak, that flinches at confrontation, that fears disappointing others, isn't weak. It's wounded. And healing begins when you stop judging that voice and start listening to it with compassion. Because the people-pleasing version of you that was never the real you, that was the protective shell you built to survive a world that didn't know how to honor your boundaries. It's time to take that shell off, slowly, gently, deliberately. Not because you're angry, but because you're ready. Ready to reclaim your space, ready to speak with conviction, ready to disappoint others if it means not disappointing yourself anymore. This battle isn't easy, but it's necessary, because until you win the war within, the world outside will keep reflecting your silence. Change doesn't begin in grand declarations. It begins in quiet, uncomfortable moments, those seconds when you realize that once again you've said yes when you meant no. When you laugh off a disrespectful comment telling yourself it wasn't that big of a deal. When you stay in the room, in the relationship, in the conversation, even though every part of you is screaming to walk away. That is the cycle of passivity. And it's not just a habit, it's a pattern wired deep into your nervous system. It tells you that speaking up is unsafe, that rocking the boat will make people leave, that asserting your needs will cost you love. So you stay small, you stay agreeable, you become an emotional shapeshifter, adjusting, accommodating, disappearing. But here's the truth, every time you ignore your own boundary, you reinforce the idea that your feelings don't matter. Every time you let something slide to keep the peace you teach others, that peace can come at your expense. And with each act of self-silencing, you slowly dissolve your sense of worth. Passivity is not peace. It is the slow erosion of your identity. So how do you break the cycle? It starts with awareness. Begin noticing the micro moments when you shrink. Who do you become around certain people? When do you feel the urge to explain yourself excessively? When do you laugh when you actually want to cry, or stay silent when something wounds you? From that awareness comes small acts of courage. Saying no without a backstory. Walking away from conversations that deplete you. Not replying right away when someone demands your energy. You reclaim your power in fragments, one conscious choice at a time. And yes, when you shift your behavior, people will notice. Some will challenge you, others will withdraw. But that's not failure, it's clarity. Because the people who only valued your silence were never really loving you. They were loving your compliance. You don't need to fight. You don't need to scream. You don't even need to convince anyone. You just need to stop betraying yourself. The world will always test your limits. But when your inner yes and outer yes finally align, something powerful happens. People start to listen. Your presence grows heavier, and your silence becomes sacred. The goal was never to stop being kind. It was never about becoming cold, distant, or emotionally armored. The goal is to become whole, a person whose kindness is no longer confused with compliance, whose softness is no longer mistaken for surrender. To become someone who can love without losing themselves, who can give without being emptied, who can say no without guilt. Because true strength is not the absence of compassion, it's the protection of it. It's being able to stand in your truth firm and grounded even when it would be easier to shrink back into old habits. It's looking someone in the eye and saying, I care about you, but I will not tolerate being disrespected. This kind of strength doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to dominate. It doesn't seek to control others. It simply refuses to be controlled. And this is where your transformation begins, not in becoming someone else, but in returning to who you were before the world told you that love had to hurt, that peace meant silence, and that kindness required your disappearance. You were never meant to live in extremes. You weren't born to be passive, nor were you built to become harsh. You were meant to embody both the open heart and the unshakable boundary. To be kind is a gift, but to remain kind while being strong, that's power. It means you give because you want to, not because you're afraid of losing love. It means you forgive, but you remember the lesson. It means you can walk away with grace, not bitterness, and still never return to the place that broke you. When you stop seeking to be liked and start demanding to be respected, something fundamental shifts in the energy you carry. Your presence changes. Your posture changes. The way people approach you begins to change. Not because you've become someone hard, but because you become someone clear. That clarity is what Machiavelli understood long before the world did. That the person who is both kind and strong will never be underestimated again. So no, you don't have to choose between being good and being powerful. You have to choose to be both unapologetically. Because the world doesn't need more people who are easy to like. It needs more people who are impossible to ignore. Life application: how to be kind without being used. If there's one truth that echoes through this entire message, it's this: kindness, when not protected by strength, becomes a liability. In a world that rewards confidence, clarity, and boundaries, being nice is not enough, not if it comes at the cost of your self-respect. Many people were raised to believe that goodness means self-sacrifice, that saying yes makes you lovable, and saying no makes you cold. But life has a way of showing you otherwise. You begin to see that without boundaries, your kindness will be mistaken for availability. Your silence will be interpreted as permission. And over time, you will not only lose others' respect, you'll lose your own. The solution is not to harden your heart or shut people out. It's to own your space. Start by asking yourself, where in my life am I shrinking to be accepted? Who drains my energy without giving anything back? In what moments do I betray my instincts just to avoid conflict? These aren't just reflections, they are starting points. Because strength doesn't mean aggression, it means self-possession. And respect doesn't begin with how others treat you. It begins with how you treat yourself. So let this be your reminder: you can be compassionate and still say no. You can be generous and still protect your peace. You can love deeply and still walk away when love turns into manipulation. Kindness is sacred, but only when you stop giving it to those who treat it like it's free. You're not here to be liked by everyone. You're here to be respected by the right ones.